Hi, it's Ileana at Awakening Cosmic Reality Show, and I have Jen Sullivan with me today. She's an accomplished author, a past life experiencer, and she's done several beautiful hypnosis sessions over the last couple of years, learning about her past lifetimes in Atlantis and what that was like. Her book is called Child of the Universe. And today we're going to be talking about Atlantis and Lemuria in her journeys, what she experienced in her past lives. She's also recently written a follow-up copy of another new book. Jen, can you please tell us about the first book and the second book?
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me on today and willing to talk about this. It's definitely a new kind of concept for a lot of people, and to have such a receptive audience with you is quite a treat. So thank you so much for that today. I'll tell you a little bit. This is my first book that I published in November of 2020. And it's called Child of the Universe. And I go by the name JLF Sullivan when I write, but my name is Jen, just like pretty much everyone else my age. A lot of Jens at that time. But I decided to write this book after I worked with the hypnotist Sarah Bressman Cosme. And for almost 4 years, we worked together and we did multiple quantum healing hypnosis technique hypnosis sessions, more than most people would probably ever do in their lifetime. We lived very close to each other. We'd been friends for many years. We just had the ability to pretty much meet like every week, every other week. So we would go on these sessions in an effort to try to help cure or to just heal me. I could tell you a little bit about that in a few minutes, but I had some health issues that were going on, and conventional medicine just wasn't doing it for me. It was actually making me a bit sicker than I was when I first started my journey. So Sarah came to me with the offer of trying to do some quantum healing hypnosis, and it regressed me back to a lifetime that I was very unfamiliar with. It was something that took place in what we would call the lost civilizations of Atlantis and Lemuria. And this was kind of new stuff for me. I wasn't very into this kind of information. I just wasn't in the know. I wasn't a researcher of this kind of stuff. So it wasn't something that I was like, oh, that makes total sense. I was kind of confused by the sessions, but after a couple of years of them, I realized the information we were getting was a story, and it was a story that was a bit bigger than me. And I decided to put it into a book format and to share it with people to see if it had the same kind of healing effect for them that it had for myself in many ways. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
So what was the story like? What did you discover from those past life explorations of Atlantis and Lemuria? Because Sarah has talked in depth about your experience, and I listened to those two interviews, and I find the story profound. And I read about your personal story as well, your health, and that you were dealing with toxins and chemicals and things of the nature of your home, something happening to your home and your eyesight, because I want to know the personal as well, what a person experiences in their life and how that affects them. And I think that is profound because both experiences, what currently happened in your life led you to do the past life stuff, correct?
Yes, it actually more or less found me. I didn't actually know this even existed when I was dealing with my health issues. It kind of just came as an offering from out in, out of the blue. There it is. But it finds you, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, definitely. So please tell us about the past life experiences in your health, whatever you want to share, what you feel comfortable.
Thank you. I think the best place to start is the beginning with all of it. I lived in the Florida Keys for many years. Was married, I had children. I had a friend named Sarah Bressman Cosme who lived not too far away, and our kids went to school together. And for years and years, we just kind of interacted as friends who saw each other at our kids' schools' activities and whatnot. And one day in 2017, our entire island had to evacuate because a Category 5 hurricane was coming right for us. So we all pretty much boarded up our houses and left and hoped for the best. And eventually, when we started evacuating, we realized it was pretty much half the state of Florida was evacuating with us. It was chaos. It was nuts. It was a terrible experience to have to live like that and to not know where you're going to live. And we had to pretty much live elsewhere for about 2 months before we could go back into our homes. Our home, when we did get back down to it, was destroyed. It was not livable. Our roof had been ripped off. Our everything was just a mess. And on top of that, our county, our local government and our state government couldn't decide who was going to pay for the cleanup, so they just didn't clean up. They left us in piles and piles of toxic debris for months. Almost 8 months we sat in the wreckage of this hurricane. And they just kind of routed the tourist in one direction so they wouldn't see what was going on. And then the rest of us just sat there, and a lot of us died. There were a lot of people who just didn't make it through the aftermath of the hurricane because of what was happening there. And then you throw in the stress of the insurance companies not wanting to pay out, and it was a nightmare for a lot of us. And Sarah was heavily affected as well. Her home was also heavily destroyed, and it was a hard thing for a lot of us to wrap our minds around and to recover from.
Mm-hmm.
So while I was trying to rebuild our home and fight my insurance company, I woke up one morning and my vision in my right eye was, it was like a crescent shape had been burnt into my vision. And I just didn't know what was going on. So I went to the optometrist and I said, like, this is weird thing. Did I burn my eye? Was I looking at the computer too much? Like, what's going on? And they immediately sent me to the emergency room and said, you need to have this looked at. There's something going on. And it turned out I had developed a condition called pseudotumor cerebri, which is when there is a buildup of excess cerebrospinal fluid in the brain, and it acts as water-filled tumors that put pressure on different parts of the brain. It can cause stroke, it causes loss of vision, and generally it's a painful condition. You just constantly have a migraine headache and you constantly have pressure on your eyes. So it's something that they're finding more and more is becoming more common with women too right now. And they think there's a lot of links to chemicals, different types of birth control as well as causing it, and stress on top of it. So, nice combination we have. And they don't know how to treat it. They just tell you to lose weight. And when you do and it doesn't go away, they tell you, yeah, just keep going. We'll see what happens. So the other options, you can go on heavy medications that affected my kidneys. You can just constantly take all kinds of stuff, and it's just not helpful. It just didn't make me feel any better, and it didn't make my vision improve. And sorry, am I good to keep going? Is this all right to keep going so long?
I can relate to you with vision issues because in 2017, I had white matter lesions in my brain with migraines. Nobody believed me. They said it's psychosomatic. It's not real. I paid out of pocket for an MRI because the doctors refused to give me an MRI. Wow. And I had 2 lesions in my brain. My vision was going gray and black and blurry. And I went back into hypnosis. I went back into my secret space program stuff and discovered that I had been doing creating biological drug serums in the cybernetics labs on Mars, and that human plasma can regenerate the brain. It can remove white matter lesions, and it could fix somebody's vision. So I applied for specialized permission to use off-label human plasma, like clean, purified human plasma, to infuse myself in the stomach twice a week. And human plasma, it regenerated my brain matter, like neurological damage. The lesions are gone because they were deep in the white matter. After 2 years, the lesions were gone, and my vision instantly after 2 sessions, the blurriness went away, the gray and the blackness went away, and it fixed my vision. And I have astigmatism. No matter which pair of glasses you prescribe me, it's still a problem, and I can't get surgery because it's severe. And I can see so much better now. Like I could actually see the crosswalk signs and the street lights. went across the street because it fixed it. So there are ways to heal yourself in you just hypnosis can reveal so much about our past lives, about things that happened to us in life experiences. Honestly, I would say it saved my life.
I relate to you when you say that. I truly do, because without this alternative to just treating the pain and treating the ability for me to have an everyday normal life beyond
Mhm.
just the condition itself, like
Yeah.
it's you're just given the second chance with it all. And I searched for it and I didn't realize it even existed until it kind of found me. And I completely relate to everything you're saying. It's frustrating, isn't it, when you know something's wrong and it's like, I have to find relief somewhere. You can't, I have little children at home. I can't just keep living like this and not be able to do what they need. And it's a frightening place to be. And I was really glad that Sarah brought the concept up to me and gave me the offer, because I just honestly it's had so much more of a profound effect on my life, more than just my health. I feel like my overall sense of well-being, my sense of authenticity to myself, my sense of just like my role in this bigger picture of whatever this whole universe is functioning as right now, it's affected me on my health and my inner being level, and it's deep. Like I'll never be the same again, and I'm glad.
Hmm. And have you stayed in Florida or have you moved? Like, what was that experience like? Were you able to rebuild your home, or did you go somewhere else? What happened with that journey?
I'll tell you a little bit about that. So we decided after it took us 3.5 years after about the hurricane hit for us to actually rebuild the home and to get the money and to finally figure it all out and get it done. And by the time we finished, we realized we were kind of scared to live there. And we both kind of realized, my husband and I, at the same time, we were like, we don't want to replant our gardens. We don't want to heavily invest in like doing anything with the house anymore, just because we feel like it's going to happen again and we need to leave. Like this isn't where we're supposed to be. And so we kind of came together and had this conversation, and right away this offer came to my husband of doing the same work that he does in the Florida Keys. He was a fisherman, but doing it in Hawaii. And we said yes, like obviously let's do this. And we sold everything and sold the house, sold the business like that I had. I had an ice cream business. We sold our cars, and we literally came here with about a suitcase each and started our lives again. And it's been amazing for us. We weren't meant to stay in the Keys. And I think a lot of me staying in the Keys had a lot to do with my past life that I uncovered with Sarah about being a political prisoner in this island that was not that far from there. And there were so many connections that I felt like I was almost released when I wrote my book, and I was released from my hold there, and I no longer needed to be there. And within 6 months, I was here in Hawaii looking for my new home. And we've decided to do an off-grid home. I live like in the middle of nowhere, and it's wonderful. I have very little electric that I get from a solar generator. I don't have running water, but it's like Little House on the Prairie, and I absolutely love the simplicity that it's brought to me.
Which island are you on?
I'm on the big island of Hawaii on the Kona coast.
Oh, beautiful. Well, it's where the Guardians started. Lemuria, Guardians, the energy, the spirit of them is still there. I once visited Kauai and it was the most beautiful experience I've ever had. That's an amazing place. Are you up in the like mountains somewhere, or I don't know, because I think I see snow behind you or something
No,
white feels like
actually,
snow.
that's the ocean. And I think that's my neighbor's roof down there.
Oh, okay.
But
I
I'm
just
actually very close to the ocean. I shouldn't be. I know from history. I should have
well,
probably been up in the mountains, but I can't help it. I am an ocean person.
I'm close to the ocean too. I'm 15 minutes walk. Stuff happens physically. It happens. But
It does.
live your life to the fullest and don't worry about anything that could happen. Enjoy what you have.
Exactly. That's how I look at every day now. It's like anything could happen. Just take it minute by minute and enjoy it, relish it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, you're in a beautiful place, and I think following your own soul path journey and what you feel comfortable with and where you feel good is so important to listen to the soul. If the soul says sell the house and move elsewhere and explore, you follow the path because, things turn out well when you listen to the soul frequency.
Every time. I've never ever had it go wrong. It's literally just the most in tune guiding system I've ever seen or ever
Mhm.
experienced, and it's just within us. It's
Beautiful. Well, let's explore your past life and what happened in Atlantis.
all right. So we got started on these sessions, and I was a little unfamiliar with the process at first, but Sarah was really good. She was very in tune to just kind of calming me and slowly bringing me into a hypnotic state. And in my first session, I was allowed to ask a couple of questions. I wanted to know about the lifetime I had before this one. I was curious as to who I was and what that meant and why, why I chose this body as a result of that lifetime possibly. And I had also been involved in a political campaign in the Keys, and I was curious as to like what was my like why was I suddenly pulled into this world of like politics a little bit. And it was to pretty much help advocate for more help for people who had been hit by the hurricane, but it kind of inspired me to ask a little bit like, where did that come from? Because it wasn't something I had been interested before. So it was a lot of little questions and whatnot. Okay, so the sessions start, and I get this image of myself as a young woman in the 1970s in New York City, and I'm very distraught. And I end up bringing myself to a bridge in between Manhattan and Brooklyn and throwing myself off the bridge. And that's how my sessions pretty much started, was just this understanding that in the lifetime before this, I had ended my life. So we went further and further into understanding what had happened. And my name had been Christy, and I was a young woman, and I had started doing hypnosis in that lifetime, just accidentally as well. And I had uncovered some amazing information. Amazing, like, as in, it was kind of like, it took me back to a time probably 50 to 100,000 years ago is what I think it could have been, possibly. That's just like, if you go by a linear timeline, that's possibly what it was, where I was the daughter of a matriarch. And this place was a beautiful island out in the Pacific. It was more of a continent. It had many islands that created the whole continent, and it had outlying colonies. So if you focus pretty much between where Rapa Nui is and Hawaii, and I think going down towards the Philippines, that's where the mainland of what we called Amun was, and that was the land that I had lived in. So she begins to understand in this past life, within a past life now that we're going into, that she was meant to take on this, become the queen of this land when visitors arrived. So Sarah and I went into that past life then, and we said, well, let's just cut to the chase and go see what that was all about. So
Mhm.
we started going into the life of Kala. And Kala, as I said, was the daughter of the matriarch, the leader of Amun. Some people call it Mu. The capital is what I knew it as was Lemuria, which is what many people also relate to the idea of Lemuria as being this big continent that was lost. And I found that our family was interrupted by visitors from a place that many people call Atlantis, what we call now Atlantis, but that's what that landmass was. And that they had come looking for a cure for a virus that had interlaced into their society and was crumbling it. And they had studied us from far away, and they knew we had immunity to disease from these special red crystals that we had used in our family for generations. And the red crystals had originally come from what you would call like our ancient alien ancestors who came to settle this planet. So we had carried on their technology, carried on their traditions, and carried on with these crystals. And the people from Atlantis didn't have them anymore, and they wanted them. And basically what ends up happening is they created this massive tsunami that came with their technology and wiped out my people. It killed my family, my child. It forced me as a prisoner to be taken up into the air to watch the destruction as well in one of these spheres that they traveled around in. So this was all for me to start understanding in my sessions was I found it a bit weird. I was like, where is all this coming from? This wasn't stuff I was traditionally like interested or not like I wasn't not open to it, but it just wasn't something I kind of related with at first. But the further and further I got into it, it was like, I I remember this. Like these are the dreams I've had as a child. I can see like snips of this in moments, and I remember that, and I remember these people. I got to a point where I just couldn't deny that this was something that had happened to me at some point. This was part of my soul. This wasn't something I was just remembering from a movie as a child. And it hit me hard when I realized that this was a part of me and I needed to know more. So I'll stop to breathe for a minute there.
Yeah, because when going back to these experiences, it's emotional. It's like it's your past, and it
Yeah.
sometimes can affect the present.
It is. And it's interesting when you see how a lot of people ask, like, do you see it like a movie? And I say no, it's more like when you smell something that maybe you used to eat in your grandmother's kitchen when you were little and you haven't smelt it in 30 years, and you smell it somewhere else and suddenly you're right back in that kitchen and you remember every detail, but you forgot about it for 30 years. That's what
Yeah,
it's like.
yeah, I can relate to that because I just recently wanted to explore all my soul vibrations, soul field, the body, the frequencies, because everything has a hertz frequency.
Mhm.
And I'm a psychic, so when I do these readings, I just automatically can tell people what's going on with the soul and the body. But I had forgotten that I had taken a course 15 years ago on a Russian system called the Matryoshka frequency reading with these nesting dolls. And I'm Ukrainian. I'm from Ukraine. And the system goes thoroughly into every vibration, every frequency in the soul and the body, the mind, everything, health, finances, it does everything. So you, as a psychic, you go for that frequency, but then you also do observations of what you see in each frequency vibration. So it's a
Mm.
very deep reading. It takes 3 to 7 days to do if you want to get down deep and thorough. I
Whoa.
I found out so many things about my soul that I knew bits and pieces, but this is incredible. And this was 15 years ago. And I took notes because the teacher would just meet with me and just describe it to me and tell it to me. And I would take basic notes because back then I wasn't even a psychic. I didn't comprehend the system. I wasn't
Mm.
ready to do the system, but
Yeah.
now it's like because I've been doing this work, I'm now ready to do the system on myself, to teach the system to others. And it's something you kind of have to already be psychic, like trained as a psychic to do the readings with it. And I was humbled when I did it for myself to look at a few things that I need clarified. I was humbled, and it's something that was 15 years ago, and I'd totally forgotten about it almost. I used the codes and I used the frequencies from those protocols, but in different ways. But when I went back to it, I'm like, I took out my Matryoshka doll, the seven little nested, small doll, big doll, bigger, bigger. I'm like,
Mm.
wow, that's a heritage I'll never forget. Because there's actually a Russian system, a psychic system for frequency reading based off of it.
I need to learn more about that. That is part of, I feel like the evolvement of our journey is like going from the sessions to going to you're able to just do it on your own now, and you can
Yeah.
empower yourself to just go on that journey and do that. And I'd love to get more information about that from you at some point.
Yeah, it's really like and I'm revising the whole thing because those were notes from when I was in my 20s, early 20s, and it's much different when I'm 38 because I realize how special the work is. And it's like it took me about 3 to 7 days to figure it out. And now I'm kind of adding to the frequencies, to the categories, and describing the categories and the frequencies because I'm thinking of doing a course, like trying to teach it actually. And all my psychic friends said that's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy because not everyone might get it, how to do it. I'm like, well, people can try. If they want to do it, take the course. I will teach it, the full system, and you just try your best to work with it. I'm not guaranteeing that everybody can because it's based on psychic ability, like
Exactly.
clairaudience, claircognizance, clairvoyance, clairsentience. Those abilities have to be active to a certain degree for it to work. So I understand, but I want to do it because I did it on myself. I was finally ready 15 years later to do it.
Isn't it funny how it just kind of like lingers around, just waiting for you to be ready or to have that like vibrational match to whatever it is? And now it's a go, go for it.
Yeah, well, I needed to see something about my health to get some clarity, and that's the only thing that would provide the clarity. Plus, my soul mission and life purpose, like it really gave me something deeper than what I thought it would be. But like when you do it on yourself, you're stepping away out of yourself, so you're non-biased. It's an intuitive. You start to do intuitive frequency reading and observations because it's not you yourself as the everyday human person that does it. It's the highest form of your intuitive self that does the reading for you. If you're using the system on yourself to do it for yourself, you can't be biased. You have
Mm-hmm.
to step aside from the daily stuff of who you are as human and all the stuff that comes with us as humans, and you're just purely in your intuitive form doing it. So there's no bias and there's no backloading or front loading of anything. So just that aspect of your pure self is doing it, not the human self that's just in the system every day. That steps aside. So it's really humbling.
It really is. I think that's something you should consider because I think a lot of people right now are looking for more of that empowerment. And as long as you're looking to do something and benefit to yourself and not looking to disprove something, like the world is your oyster as to how far you can go and what you can learn and what your brain can tap into. So people are always going to tell you some people aren't going to get it because it's true. Some people are just not going to get it, but that's their journey.
Yeah, and I'm putting in the hard work to make it a full length course because again, I have to go back to all my notes. I have to reread everything, relook at everything. So when you're younger, it wasn't to the same depth of what I realize now about the system and how it works. It's like updating, upgrading, putting in the work to make sure it's to the same standard that I just used on myself. So the system that I was taught is great, but the notes have to be upgraded for the course.
Truly, and also look at the world that we live in now as opposed to 15, 20 years ago, the level of authenticity that we can live within what we create out of that, the level of acceptance from, that your inner acceptance you get from like completing these kind of things totally changed. It wouldn't have meant as much back then, I feel like.
It was so sweet and innocent back then. Now there's more realization of the psychic plane, the astral plane, what exists beyond 3D. So I think I was so sweet and innocent back then. I didn't really understand the psychic stuff at all, but I took it because it resonated, and it's part of the heritage. So it resonated, but I'm like, I could not do it. I totally could not do it before. Like I understood how you do it, but I couldn't do it. It was just because I wasn't psychically able to be at the level that I'm now, and that's fine. We all come from sweetness and innocence, and we still have sweetness and innocence today. It's just a different level of it, I think.
I agree. It does. I think there's certain, the experiences we've had over the last couple of years they change us and you can't stay that sweet innocence within that knowledge. I feel like you can, but it's not authentic to you. You grow and you
Mhm.
more as you experience these things. And I
Yeah.
recognize that. Yes.
Um, so what happened in Atlantis? Like what happened to you? Because you said they took you in the
Yeah.
sphere. Like what happened then?
So I experienced the destruction of Lemuria from up in the sphere in the sky, and I blacked out when I was chemically awoken. uh, I was taken through the streets, well, into this facility in Atlantis in the middle of the night. And when I was being led in there, I noticed that it looked like there had been some stuff going on. Like the society looked scared. It just looked pretty devastating, not as destruction wise, but like they were definitely scared, the people who were living there. I then spent the next 60 years, and I write about this in the book, as a political prisoner in this place while they experimented on me, tortured me. They did all kinds of just all kinds of things to try to understand how to use the red crystals they had taken from my people. And over the course of time, they no longer, we had regime changes. And by the end of my time there in Atlantis, I was pretty much forgotten about and just thrown in with the rest of the political prisoners that were amounting every day. More and more and more were taken in. So I knew from where I was in my standpoint in that jail cell that something was going on politically in the land beyond the virus that they believed that they had cured. So if I could take a step back with what had happened to them, they had suffered for this virus that had it was very sudden onset for them. They tried many things to prevent it. They tried many vaccines, many different techniques. Nothing was working. And what I understood through my sessions was that it was meant to cause them to evolve as a society. And they needed to go through a certain amount of this in order to understand the next step for them. From the effects of this virus, the children that were being born to many people were being born with these animal features, and they couldn't understand what was going on. And because they were very scientifically kind of cold in a lot of ways, they were able to just look at the children and say that they don't need to be here, and they were getting rid of them. And when I say getting rid of them, they were killing them. They were bringing them to these islands, they were destroying them, they were pulling them away from the families that did want to keep them, and they were clearing their society of this black dot that had appeared. Until one day, one of the leaders of Atlantis had a grandchild that was born with these features, and actually took the time to study and to understand how that worked, and realized that these children were powerful, that they could manipulate these crystals and cause this energy to arise. And suddenly they realized, let's stop killing them that way. Let's start taking all these animal children and utilizing their powers in a different way. And what they had been doing was kind of sucking the life out of these children that they were holding as prisoners, while they were using the red crystals to create an energy that would keep the upper echelons of society healthy and keep them young looking. It was just like this youth serum almost that was being created for them. So the children were just being kept on these islands with these crystals, and I was eventually released from prison because nobody knew who I was anymore, and the government had kind of been overthrown. So they were releasing all the political prisoners, trying to figure out who was what and where was what. And I had an interaction with someone when I was in jail, and they came to kind of help me at that point. And he was a judge, a big, powerful judge in the land. And he brought me on this kind of journey that eventually leads to the destruction of Atlantis. But I don't want to give away too much of what it all entails. But what had happened between us all was linked back to our earliest days of being colonized here on Earth by visitors from another place. And it was just a continuing flow of events that had happened, like a domino effect from that point on to that moment of Atlantis's destruction. And I write all about it, and I talk about how through past lives, I noticed there was a link between like our DNA and our past lives. If we want to, we can continuously be born within the same families, or we can choose to not be. And in a lot of those lives, I had chosen that to stick with the DNA route. And what I understood was just that these destructions, these civilizations disappearing, are just a part of our evolution. And we are this experiment that has gone way further than I think most of our predecessors ever thought it would go, or hoped it could go. So that's kind of a little bit of a longer version of how I feel the time in Atlantis was spent.
And were these experiments on the children and sending them to the islands, was that eventually stopped, that practice?
In my sessions, I began to understand that Sarah Breskman Cosme's past life was that of the judge there in Atlantis. So we were able to go deeper into that and see what had gone on with these children. And the judge had created a lot of problems for himself by trying to create a sanctuary for these children outside of Atlantis, that they decided that the children could live and they could go to this island and they could be cared for there, but they could not live within our society in Atlantis. They couldn't be seen. And when the judge finally went to visit this place and to see what was going on, he realized they were just going above his head and still killing them as they arrived. And it was a death camp. The judge kind of tried a bit more to make things happen, but Atlantis was just a really messed up place towards the end. It really was. There was a lot going on there. There was a lot of misunderstandings within the government. There was a lot going on for the people of Atlantis at that time. They were truly starting to realize their own authentic selves. They were truly starting to see that they were no longer needing to be part of this system, this like robotic system that had been created, because the people of Atlantis, the original ones, were pretty much created as a slave race. They weren't an experiment that was created to just see where the beauty and the effort of it all goes. They were created for work, to create this what I would consider a replica of one of the places on the home planet was what they created Atlantis as. And so finally, after being able to overthrow their leaders, they were looking for this inner understanding of who they are. You know, if we're not slaves, then what are we? What are we as free people? And in this technologically advanced society, I think a lot of people were looking to just, you know, kind of have that change, that transformation. So Atlantis was, it was a hot mess at that point, but it was at an evolutionary jumping point that it needed to have. And unfortunately, the energy that they were providing through these red crystals and stealing from these children, it worked against them. It created just an overload in their energy system and destroyed them. I had a little bit of a hand in it as well, but it wasn't one of those, you know, like I pressed a button and it all ended. It was a cumulative effect and a karmatic accumulation at that. So I it was interesting to watch all of this in my sessions to see and understand it all. And it was a little hard to write it, to be honest. It was a bit emotional and hard to re-listen to a lot of my sessions over and over again so many times and hear about all of this horrible stuff. But then again, I looked at the world around me and I said, how is this really that different from what's going on right now? Is this just, are we doing this again? And if we are, maybe I need to say something, because if we're just blindly going to go and make the same mistakes over and over again as a civilization, I'd rather us have a little bit of a chance this time rather than going back and starting from like basics with another ice age or anything. You know, I'd rather just say what I have to say, and if it makes any difference, it does. And if you don't need to believe me or want to know about it, it's all good. You know, it's just putting something out there that I feel and I resonate with as something of an ancient truth.
You're completely right. It's ancient history that we're reawakening to, rediscovering, because a lot of it has been destroyed. The history of Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, wiped out completely, as if it doesn't exist in the records of Earth. Because Earth history says Atlantis and Lemuria are mythical islands that come from myth and stories in Plato, but they don't just come from myths, stories, and Plato. They come from a reality that happened.
And it's intentional, I feel like, a lot of the time. Well, not, I feel like it is completely intentional that we have been given this kind of amnesia, because look at the control you have then over people when they don't have these roots back to their ancient culture, back to their ancient understandings of knowing who we really truly are and can be, and what our purpose is. It just leaves people in a cycle of just being able to be crushed by the patriarchy or religious, you know,
Yeah.
cultish behavior. It just leaves people very vulnerable, and I don't resonate with that kind of, you know, environment anymore. I feel like it's finally time for us to truly shed it, and if we speak up, maybe there's a possibility. And you know, you just got to do what you can do.
Yeah, we make change one historical event at a time. We try our best, we write our histories, we write our books, we give the truth out, we put it out there, and we hope that the best helps to make that change. When people read the past history, that it could change something for the better course of humanity, for this planet, for us, for all the beings living here, the animals, the plants, the humans. It's such a huge ecosystem and the planet itself. So we all deserve a chance to thrive and live and be happy and not repeat the past again.
It's true. I think it's time for the next step. It's time for the next level. We've repeated things so many times. And, just like young children that you have to teach things to, of course, you have to repeat yourself 60, 70 times before they finally get not to touch the stove. But I think we're ready to not touch the stove. I think we're ready for it. So,
Yeah, and not just light a fire, but go to 0 point and actually use free energy that does not require the use of burning fossil fuels and oils and gas. And it creates a whole pollution experience on this planet. Going ready beyond that, going even beyond the electrical batteries, because those are not easy to recycle as well. There's a whole planetary system that needs to be cleaned up.
I
There's
understand. I completely relate on that.
And there's knowledge of that from ancient past history, from Atlantis, Lemuria, how to do this. It's all in the Akashic records. It just sits there. You can discover it, but how do you use it? So you invent something to do it, but then it's taken away from you and put in somewhere else in a black vault. And it's like, no, 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 no. We don't want purification. You don't want clean energy. Can't happen. We need the system to run. But the system is collapsing anyways. It cannot go on this way forever.
It's just an illusion that the system's been running. It's only been feeding like 5 people. The
Yeah.
rest and yeah, and it is collapsing, but in a good way. And I think with a lot of that, just understanding this new information and then looking to pass it on to different people, and you create a difference in the way the next generation thinks, and then you create a difference in the way the generation after that thinks, and you consistently keep trying to improve it and just open up their minds to what is in the Akashic records. And then one of them taps into it because they've had that right mindset for years and they're in that vibration, and then they can start maneuvering it. So I think more of our job is to kind of open up people's minds to the facts that they can tap into this, and finding the right connection there to get that information out, and just kind of bring it there.
Yeah, exactly. And like like it's like it's part of the history. The truth will set you free. That particular phrase, when you look for the truth, when you look for the answers, what you seek, you'll find.
Exactly. Like when I first wrote these books and put it out there, I was a little embarrassed. I was like, everyone's going to think I'm crazy. Like, this is nuts. Nobody I know thinks about stuff like this. They're going to want, but I did it anyway, because I realized at the end of the day, I have to be true to myself. This is something I did, and it's something I'm proud of, and it's something I think is good. And I don't see it hurting anybody. And I think it's something that could help people. And when I thought about it that way, it overrode all of my conditioned embarrassment, my conditioned thoughts about what people were going to say and think about me, how people were going to view me. And it just was like, it was freeing. It's very freeing to remove yourself from all of that and to realize, like, you are so you're so much bigger than what you bring yourself down to.
Exactly. And reading your book about the history, what you experienced in your past lifetimes with Lemuria and Atlantis, it brought me back to my own hypnosis sessions. The very first ones, the self regressions that I did, where I learned that I had been a cybernetics technician making human biological cyborgs on Mars with planetary corporations, this whole secret space program off world on Mars, the moon. They had me creating biological drug serums to inject people to keep them looking younger by 30, 40, 60 years. So the red crystals, what happened in Atlantis, reversing the aging process to keep those people in power youthful and young, while the rest of the people were just going through whatever. There's connections from the past to the advanced things happening off world in a human civilization. That's us, but on other planets in secret. It's
Yes.
happening now.
I've started writing another book, and it kind of goes into a little bit of that, but a little bit beyond Mars, and Mars is something truly I did go into a little bit in my sessions with Sarah, but I don't think we wrote about too much of it. But I'm looking now in the third book at other civilizations that were set up on other planets by the same people who came to Earth to colonize it, and how they've varied in their development compared to us, and how in many ways they've been rivals, and it's just like the whole family understanding of all of us in different ways, and all of the beings who have come from these different planets and then get settled in other places. And God, it's like it's a whole nother level, isn't it, when you think of how far it goes? And
Yeah, well, I mean, we have a human system on Earth, but that other human system that left Earth, like our scientists developed more advanced technology on the moon and Mars now. So we're not being told the whole truth, what's happening on Mars and the moon. That's just my history of what came in hypnosis. Atlantis came in hypnosis as well, that I was a geneticist, and the whole Sons of Belial and the Law of One, and they were doing secret experiments under the Atlantean cities. They had labs. The children were born with feline features and animal features and abilities, and that nobody wanted them. That is a memory I have. And my own partner was killed for opposing the genetic experiments, creating the chimeras that were running around.
so
Yeah.
you resonate with it. It's very interesting, the people who get that and like have those memories. You're not the only one. I've had a lot of people write to me about that, and that was probably one of the things I thought was the most far-fetched part of it. Like, they're never going to believe kids were born with animal features, but that tends to be one of the things that brings people to me, is just this understanding of and that vague memory of having their child taken away with those animal features. And
Yeah, my life partner, who was also a friend, he worked in a lab and I worked in a lab, and a geneticist. We worked with DNA, altering DNA. He wanted to tell the truth. He wanted to stop the creation of these chimeras. But when he went and tried it, he was taken and killed. And I watched it happen, and I said nothing to make a change, which I was afraid. I was honestly afraid I would be killed too. But I said nothing, and it continued. Then I have a lifetime in Atlantis as a mermaid under the water, living in the domes, and then coming out of the water, getting legs and walking to the healing temples, working with the crystals to heal people, to keep them younger with the crystalline beds and the wands, and just making sure people lived for 3 to 500 years or even 1,000 years. So it's like there's many epochs of Atlantis too. It's not just one particular historical scene. It had a few epochs.
I tell that to people all the time when they're like, well, I thought Atlantis was this and that. And I said, well, look at America in its 200 and something years that we've had. How many different faces have we had as a civilization?
Mhm.
That lasted way longer than America has even considered. It's like an infant in comparison. So, if your time in Atlantis, you remembered X, Y, and Z, that's when you were there.
Mhm.
Even someone living the same existence as me right now in this world, the same age as me, but living in Afghanistan, is going to tell a very different story in her past lives in the future than the
Yeah,
one. So
but these stories are similar and they have common denominators. It is amazing how we can come together through our stories, our present, our past, and our future, and just listen open heartedly without judgment, and just listen and hear the story and keep an open mind. Nothing, I don't think any of this is crazy. I think it's real. I think it happened to us. Just keeping an open mind.
I'm right there with you. It's just keep an open mind. I'm not asking you to believe anything, but if you resonate with it, maybe you want to think a little bit about it. Think a little bit about what that is for you and what that is for you in your current life as well, because there is a huge connection there.
Oh, yes, definitely. I agree. And you wrote a second book. Would you like to talk a little bit about the second book?
Love to. And it's funny you were talking about the mer people, because I talk about them in the second book. Uh, this is called The Gift of the Stars. So this book, I remember how I told you the first lifetime that I encountered in my sessions was a young woman named Christy in the 1970s in New York City. Well, this is her story. And I decided to put it down because on paper. Uh, when I moved here to Hawaii, I started having these really strange dreams at night. And it was very repetitive. Over and over again, I dream of the same place. And I started realizing that it was the home that this young woman had lived in before she ended her life. And so I realized, like, maybe that's not done. Maybe I need to think a little bit more about what that was and how it is connected to my life now, and kind of go into it. So I did. I wrote her story down, and it's all about her journey and her struggle to bring this knowledge to people, and how she was way ahead of her time, and how society just was not ready for it, and what they did to her, and how they tore her down and kind of brought her to that point. But I also talk about in the book what the afterlife is like, what happens after you die, and how it is a place of no judgment of how you've done or what you've done, how you've gotten there. It's a place of reflection and rest, and it's a place of reviewing what you've learned and contributing to this cumulative experience, this oneness that we're all a part of and connected to. And I try to I try my best to do justice to her story, to show what she went through as a woman at that point in history. And to be honest, how we've come a long way, but we're starting to lose grip of how far we've been able to advance, specifically just as women in society, and how we need to hold on to that now.
Yeah, not to lose the feminine aspects.
Truly, and the divine feminine as well as the divine masculine. Of I don't believe in this whole like is strong feminism and women need to be running everything. I think equality is truly at the end of the day what we're searching for, and it's only found by having that balance brought back to homeostasis.
Yeah, and there's this whole identity crisis with children and changing body types and changing your anatomy and this whole thing of who are you morphing into? Is it something you yourself want to do and change, that you're not happy with what you're seeing in the mirror, so you just want to change a gender? Or is it something else influencing you outside yourself, telling you it's like it's okay to play around with body types and bodies and change bodies? Now that we have the technology to do it, it's possible. But is it okay? Should we be doing this? Should we be going that far, teaching young people to do this?
I believe that everyone has a right to feel happy and comfortable in their
Yeah.
body. And there's no one who can tell you what makes you happy and comfortable in your body.
Yeah, yeah, just the
With that,
freedom, the
the
freedom to decide.
to find for yourself who you truly are and be that person authentically. It's meant to happen now. We're meant to trigger people with these concepts and these thoughts. We need to move away from that mentality of something needs to look a certain way, or maybe we
Mm,
should decide for someone else what's right for them. And
yeah.
oh, I think we all just need to take a massive step back into ourselves and discover ourselves a bit more before we look at anything that goes within those realms, you know?
Yeah, and be allowed to choose. Be allowed
Truly,
to choose. And
choice.
but also allow children to grow up and choose without choosing it for them, what they should look like and be like. If they're experimenting with an experience, allow them to have the experience. And if they want to change something physically later on, then they can choose it, but don't choose it for them and just change them.
I
Because
have
children,
children, and I'm going to tell you what, every single one of them is completely different. And I wish I could say there's one phrase and one idea that could work for all four of them, but as different as they are and the different people they're going to be, and I know who they are, I think different situations might have worked for each one of them. And I think everything needs to be taken down to the individual level.
mhm.
Because you and I, growing up as children, may have needed very different things to feel comfortable and happy. And I feel that, you know, it's just keeping an open mind for everything.
Yeah, and I mean, I was born in the 80s, so I didn't know what a cell phone was. I didn't wasn't glued to a computer. No internet. It was the old-fashioned way. You had to go to the library and research and find the information. Now it's the instant library world. The internet is your library. It's your oyster to find decent information, what you need. I think libraries are important, and everybody, please visit libraries, work with the libraries, but the internet is a library system within itself. If you use it safely and wisely, it can give you very interesting answers to what you're seeking. But it's a whole different world. I think like back then the technology was, you were lucky if you had a black and white TV in your home, or not at all. I grew up without a TV. So it's
I think the tech, it's very interesting. You were saying that you're 38, so I'm 39. And I think the years that we were born were like a weird in between small generation of people, and it's not really millennial, it's not really Gen X, but we're somewhere in between, and we're the only group of people who were born like on the cusp of this analog and digital world, and we're the only people who really remember and know how to function perfectly within both. And I think it's really interesting to look at our development too, as just a generation of like what we've contributed now to the people who born in that generation created your Facebooks, your so many different things that have shaped us. And like how sorry, I think I lost my original point with that, but I think just that kind of, you know, understanding of the technology around us puts us in a bit of an advantage, because we still have that tie back to the way you can work and function without all the technology. And we may need that one day, we may not, you know, it's still something important, but it's like that last kind of that last jump before you've made that evolutionary jump, you know?
Yeah, because the last planetary frequency harmonic shift was in 1987, and we're due for one in 2025, like jumping frequency wise into more of that 5D aspect.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense, because look at what's changed since 1987. It's like you don't
Huge.
recognize the world when I look at my childhood pictures. You don't.
Oh, no, it's a totally different world. And it's like you can take a beautiful photo within 5 seconds and then have the colors beautiful, vibrant, just by adding in a bit more color frequency to it before you take your picture and you see what your picture looks like. It's no longer developing something you black and white, you took a picture of and you don't know how it's going to turn out because it's film. Now it's digital on your cell phone and it looks exactly like you were shot the picture on a DSLR camera. Little phones can now take such huge, beautiful pictures. And it's vibrant, it's technology, but it's also where we're going energetically. Because I saw like around 2025, 2030, a lot of these ships uncloaking, a lot of the advanced civilizations that are positive uncloaking their ships and just making contact globally with us. It's just everywhere on the planet, just these ships all over the planet. I'm like, that's interesting. Will that happen? It's like contact. Will first contact be made, second, third? And I saw that they would come down and have these exchange programs with us where we can go on their ships and learn from them, and they can learn from us and teach us. Open communication, exchange of advanced knowledge and information technologies, just for the better of cleaning up the planet, positive. Nothing to do with weapons, nothing to do with warfare, quite the opposite, of healing, actually.
You know, it's funny you talk about that, because I did go into some of my sessions with Sarah, and we decided to look at that you know, just the ships, what's going on there, and I felt a very heavy connection to them in the sense of just the connection between the past lives and that newness of, not the newness, but I think the understanding of, you know, there are other beings out there, and they do come, they visit, they see us, you know, they're there. I see them here in Hawaii all the time. I used to see them in the Keys as well. And it's funny, I was actually at my neighbor's house a couple of weeks ago, and we're sitting out on our porch, and we're just looking at these chasing lights up in the water above the sky, and going faster than anything, and then suddenly stopping. And it's just, we know you're there. We see you. You know, it's an amazing time to be alive, I find, to have chosen to be alive.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't wait to see what happens in this next frequency shift harmonic. And people have been talking about this event, this big event. When is it going to happen? Why? Where? It's already happening. It's in progress. It always happens.
Thank you, because that is a big thing for me. So many people ask me about that, and I say, where have you been? Like, it's been going on. You don't feel that? You don't see this? Like, I'm totally every day looking at what it's done to people, and what's happening across the world. And it's like, this is it, guys.
Yeah.
I had her I had her during my time with Sarah Breskman Cosme, actually. I was really lucky to be able to have another child. I after my health issues with the hurricane and everything else, I was told that I shouldn't have any more children, that it probably would not be a good idea. It'd probably cause a stroke and, don't do that. And what happened? I got pregnant. So I had this baby, and throughout the course of my pregnancy, I did all of this quantum healing hypnosis therapy with Sarah, and I was checked in, I was buzzing, I was like on this whole different level, and it affects the child. She is a pleasant, smart, like very in tune young child, and I think a lot of that has to do with just the frequency you're on while you're creating this other human being. And I don't know, I just like, she's amazing. It's a blessing to be able to pass that, I guess, to another person, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, and not just sit there in the bunker waiting for things to happen. Live the life, live the event.
That's it, isn't it? Like 100%. I feel like, okay, so if there is this event, the world's changing, things are kind of going all over the place. Why not focus entirely on living the best possible life you can? Every minute that you have left, throw everything you have into it and just find your happiness. Like, it doesn't mean you go have like a shopping session at Bergdorf Goodman's and drop everything you have on it and then.
I have a fur child who's 11 years old, a cat. When the meowing starts and it's like I need to be fed, she needs to be fed every 2 hours because cats, when they have older metabolisms, they need more food. So when that meow comes, I'm like out the door to feed the child.
Dedicated, right? Just keeping it going.
Kids are the most important things, whether human kids or fur kids. They're number one. They're priority number one.
Exactly. It's a mindset. It's a lifestyle, isn't it? Like, it's all the above, and it's just it's
They're
a huge part of I feel like part of who we are here on this planet is, it doesn't matter the shape or what it is, just the sense of being able to give that love and that condition, that not conditioning, hopefully not conditioning, but
no,
unconditional love too.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And people ask me, why do you indulge this cat? Why do you pander to the cat and all its needs? Because it's my child.
Right.
I will always love my child unconditionally, no matter what. And this cat is something special. I always find sniper presents where I least expect to find big presents. I will find them. I'll just clean it up and just, say thank you for your gifts. The gifts have been cleaned up. And she lets me know when the gifts have been deposited, like meow, meow, I've done it, here you go. And it's not in the litter box where you would expect, but with age, animals change. And it's like a child, it's reverting back to a baby.
It's rewarding, but man, does it sometimes require a lot of wipes.
I don't mind. I'm happy to go look to see where the last one was deposited, and I found it in the cat tunnel. Like I looked for an hour. It was in the cat tunnel.
Ton of time.
She played and then she did her stuff, and it smelled like a barnyard. I couldn't find it, but it was hilarious. I'm like, where did you leave it, you little sniper? Like, where did you do it? Tell me. And she's like, just sitting there smiling, like, nope, you need to hide and seek, go find it, go play and find it. I'm like, okay, I'll find it.
Like, warmer, mother, colder, colder.
Yeah. But you know what? I love her. She's lovely. She's the best cat ever. She's my soulmate.
It's amazing. I love that. There's so many forms we take as far as like where we let our souls go, and it's way beyond the human body. We are just beings with these amazing presences, and when you recognize it, even in the animals, within anyone else, it's amazing, isn't it? Like, it's just.
Yeah, I look into her green eyes and I remember a past lifetime with her from Sirius where she was the spiritual priestess and teaching me about energy and energy vibration as a living human being. But now she's in cat form.
It's, I think, a great way to just have a good time without all the extra complications, isn't it? Just take a little break. I'm going for the cat life next time.
Yeah, and cats can be higher forms of life forms. Like they could have been human one point.
Yes, I've had people I've heard of from different sessions who have regressed back to their lifetimes as crystals on other planets, as all different kinds of beings. It's just, it's, we're eternal, eternal beyond eternal. It's quite unbelievable, not unbelievable, but it's quite inspirational to look at and see just how far it goes. That
Indeed, indeed. So when is the next book coming out, number three?
hopefully by the end of the year, I'm looking to be done with it. I'm giving myself the rest of the year to kind of just sit with it, make sure that this is what I want it to be, and to be happy with it. The real reason I wrote my books at the end of the day, like, it was just for me, because I felt like I wanted to know the stories. And I saw this great quote once that basically said, if you're thinking of this story and you want to read it, it looks like it's time for you to write it. And that's where I'm at with this book. I'm pulling together everything from this one session I had with Sarah Bressman Cosme, and literally the whole book hinges on one session. So it's going to take a little bit of time for me to kind of, I'm developing my own method of going into them and understanding. But this lifetime I felt had to do with ancient Sumer. And when I was regressed to it, it was in the aftermath of giving birth to my fourth child. And I had a C-section and I couldn't heal afterwards. In fact, I had reopened the C-section in my aftermath of my delivery. And I had Sarah come over and I asked for her to help with just some healing so that way I could move on with things, because I got four kids. I got things to do. You know what I mean? Like, I got to get life going again. So she came over, and the lifetime brought me back to this battlefield in the middle of the desert. And I was understanding that my father had been trying to defend the people of myself and the other women in my village from being taken by these men, these beings, really, that had come from somewhere else and had come to take us as wives. And there was an all-out battle. Everyone was pretty much killed. I was injured in it, but I was hidden away for years and years to be protected from these beings that had come to take over this region. And I'm trying to understand now more and more what was going on at this time and how it's all connected to the other books. And it is, but I'm still writing it, so I don't want to go too far into it, you know?
Oh, I'm actually writing books about all the ancient civilizations, Sumer included, and what happened there. Yeah.
Wow. This one
Um,
feels like, I don't know if it's any like makes sense to you, but it's like pre-Sumer is what I was told in the session. It was before it became like the place with the ziggurat and everything. It was like the earliest people to come out of the caves from after the Ice Age and to start resettling the land. And I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but I'm still looking for clarity on a lot of it. So
my focus is on the A's. If you've ever heard of the A's,
A's, what's that?
the
Is that
Anunnaki.
Ah, yes, yes. That's what I've started to understand. I've told a few people about this and they told me, well, look at the Anunnaki. And when I started looking at it, I'm like, yeah, that pretty much is who was that fits the description of these large beings that I saw that had this like weird crisscrossed metal leather type of um armor almost on them that approached us and caused all this craziness for our people.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking into the history, and they were involved with Atlantis.
They are very much so. And I've saw that in some of the continuation of the sessions and just in my own personal like meditations on it. There the connections are there, all of it, like all of it. It's so intertwined that it's like a soap opera. It's just watching it like in reverse almost
Yeah,
sometimes. Like,
and I'm writing the history of that stuff that happened in that time and how it interconnects to now and what we're in right now. And
mm,
yeah, people say like, well, that's the past, leave it in the past, but it's a past that's important to remember.
we learn from the past. That's how we create the future. It's everything. You can't leave
Hmm.
the past in the past. You can settle it. You
Hmm.
you can leave your drama in the past in some ways, but never just forget it.
Exactly. So I think we're both on wavelengths of history and remembrances and just sharing history for what it was, exactly as it was. People can read it, and if they resonate, fantastic. If it doesn't, it's okay too. We're just sharing stories and experiences.
because not everyone's soul was awake at that time for some of the experiences that you and
Mhm.
I seem to share. And I recognize that as well. Like, I would never want someone to feel like you have to believe this in order for it to be right. Like, no, it's a very individual thing that some of us do feel that connection on. And I recognize that in what you talk about and in what you're looking to write about right now and your collection of it. It's a really important place to start looking, if you know what I mean. If you've
Yeah,
already on the journey that I've gone, I feel like it is the most logical place to next look.
yeah.
It's
And the A's had done some genetic modification, and I was slightly part of that 346,000 years ago.
Yes. And I saw that in a lot of my earlier sessions too. The genetic modifications were a very important and regular part of our early colonization efforts of creating us from, the seedings that happened to how we developed and when they came back and started morphing us into either slave labor or into a benevolent society. It was just a crapshoot really for a lot of us, but
Exactly, and that's part of that history. And I'm just investigating, writing, and trying not to have any personal attachment too much to it. Just write the history, share the knowledge, share the truth, the information, the Atlanteans, Lemurians, the A's, and other beings, the Syrians, Sirius, Egypt. It's all also interconnected.
yes, it is, isn't it? Oh, it's amazing when you start looking at the connections and you're like, well, that just it makes it makes a lot of sense. And it just, you know, sometimes it's not as what's the word I'm looking for? You want to think that all of these big things that have happened throughout history that we don't have an understanding for are their own things standing independently. But most of the time, they're just a product of this other thing that happened, and we've just forgotten about it as a civilization. We've been forced to forget about it. It's, I think it all just dwindles down to the control that people have over us in that, as a society.
Yeah, and I'm exploring that these beings might not really be gone, even. They might still be here in the background and, behind things that are happening. I don't want to say more because that would be in the book, but, I'm not sure if they're totally gone or not.
I completely think like no, I think that's one of the reasons you look at our society, this way we've developed the patriarchy that has been instilled in us, and the way we think, the way we demean others, the way we judge people. I think it specifically has been a matter of that kind of things sticking around and influencing us since we've emerged from the ice age and the cataclysms that happened before that. And it makes more sense that they would be sticking around than they didn't.
Yeah. Maybe behind the scenes and we're just up front and center, but it's like exploring that is worth the time. It's interesting to me, the exploration. And I let the investigation and the research take me where it will, where I can verify 3 different sources that I can put in the book of verification and some validation, because I try to do the research. I have the personal experiences, but I want the historical aspects.
Good journalistic integrity there. Have your sources and have your backups. And I think it's always good to look at things in multi dimensions in that sense, because it just brings a whole different level of understanding to the book and to the concepts you bring forth.
Yeah, it's going to be 3 volumes because it's a huge history.
Yes.
And it's so interconnected because I explore the past and the present and how everything just interconnects. And it's somewhat controversial, but I'm not worried. I'm not embarrassed. I let the truth speak for itself.
And that's the most important thing you can do. Because
Hmm.
there's really no words you can come up with that will relay it unless you go from that feeling and that frequency of, this is my truth, this is what I feel is right, and this is the best I can do right now as far as presenting information to the world.
Exactly. So it was a pleasure to meet you and speak with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And tell me about your journey once the house is done, once everything settles down in Hawaii, what the experience was like. I would love to hear about that journey sometime.
Definitely, I will. I've been writing about it on my blog, and I think I'm going to start doing a little bit more video stuff, just documenting the creation of our homestead here and just looking at like the turn towards the simple that I've made in my life of moving away from more of a fast-paced, technologically driven life and going back a couple of hundred years and learning how to relive and finding happiness in that, you know?
I'm always interested. I wrote 2 books about off-grid living and sustainability. It's like, and there's ways you can build modular homes. There's ways of sustainable living where it does not interfere with the environment.
And that's one of our biggest goals here is to just bring ourselves to a point where we're not really interfering, we're creating, and we're able to sustain our lifestyle without having to depend on, you know, governments, county sources, inflation in the supermarkets and
Mhm.
whatnot. So
Exactly. I would love to hear about your homestead and that journey as well.
wonderful. I'd love to share that with you. I would love to come back and talk to you again about all this stuff. I just feel like I found something special and I don't want to brag, but I want to share it with people and I want to let other people know like it's possible for you too. I was not in a position 3.5 years ago where I thought I could be living this way, but I really allowed for this to happen to me and it did. When you open up yourself to different understandings and to who you really are, things start to fall into place and it's a great journey to see where it brings you.
I
So
would love
thank
to hear more about it. Thank you so much.
you
Have a beautiful, blessed day.
as well.
Bye.